Bills Mafia, what's going on? It's Thursday. You know what that means. Welcome to Buffalo Late Night. We are going to talk about all things NFL Draft, all things Senior Bowl, and the journey through the offseason. Let's get it. Bills Mafia, what is going on? Happy Thursday. How we doing? I am glad you are here for Buffalo Late Night here on the Cover One Sports Network. It's been a day. It has been a day. Lots to talk about, lots to get into. But I'm your host, Thomas DeLoss. Glad you've chosen to hang out with us this evening. Thank you for tuning in, or if you're listening on Spotify, happy Friday to you. You can find our show free on all social media and streaming platforms, including Spotify and YouTube, or however you pod. If you are on Twitter right now, welcome. Glad to have you. Come on in over to YouTube if you want to chat. We are here. Guys, we are officially in the offseason. We are officially in Senior Bowl week. So there's a ton to talk about. There's a ton to discuss. Lots and lots and lots of prospects to chop up and figure out what you guys like, what you don't like, what you're thinking, and how we can move forward with this offseason in totality. Do want to say, though, make sure you guys are subscribed to the Cover One Pass. It gives you all the best content. And as we are heading into the offseason, or officially in the offseason, this is a great time to get subscribed to the Cover One Pass, as we're going to be giving you all the analysis heading forward. Myself and a bunch of the team will be down in Detroit for the NFL Draft. So we'll be giving you everything that you guys are looking for and more. You get all the Slack chat, all the good content, all the specialty shows, whether it's from Greg Tomstad explaining everything to do with the salary cap and everything in between. So check that out. I highly suggest it. Tonight, guys, we do have a lot to talk about. We're going to do a little quick Super Bowl look ahead, talking about that Chiefs and 49ers game. We're going to be talking about the NFL Draft. We're going to do a couple mock drafts tonight as a team, everybody in the chat. We're going to go through all of that. And on top of that, we are going to really kind of break down what we think. Who's going to help us? Who's not going to help us? What does free agency look like? What's going on in the Senior Bowl? And, of course, the damn segment. So, guys, we're going to get all that and more. But before I get too deep into this, I talked about the Cover One Pass. I talked about what's going on. I want you guys to hear from the two of the best, Aaron Quinn, Greg Tomstad from the Cover One Buffalo podcast. Let's hear it, gentlemen.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
There you are, guys. That is Aaron Quinn, Greg Tomstad talking about all things Cover One Pass. Now, guys, we are obviously in the off season. So, guys, we are really in the thick of it right now. We are 2 weeks away from the Super Bowl, or just under 2 weeks. This weekend we have the illustrious Pro Bowl, something I think most of us at this point have just kind of said, why even? It's quite disappointing, actually, the fact that the Pro Bowl has even gotten to this point, that it's even worth anything, because long are the days when, Brian Moorman got his head taken off But hey, we're here. We're moving forward, and let's kind of talk about what's going on with the Super Bowl itself. You got the Kansas City Chiefs against the San Francisco 49ers in a match that I think a lot of people saw coming, in a match that a lot of people kind of predicted. Some people thought it would be the Ravens, but I think at the end of the day, most people kind of thought the 49ers and the Chiefs were going to be there. They were going to be the ones in the thick of it all. And here's the thing. I think this matchup's very, very intriguing at the end of the day. I think, obviously you got Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes again back in the Super Bowl. But then you got the Shanahan angle, right? Shanahan has finally gotten past that ill-fated NFC Championship, going to be going against one of the best coaches all time in Andy Reid. And guys, I think side note, do think it's worth mentioning. I think Andy Reid should absolutely start being in the conversation as one of, if not the greatest coach of all time. What he has done so far, everywhere he's gone, he has been unbelievably successful, whether it's with Alex Smith, whether it's with Donovan McNabb. You had years where you had Mike Vick, you had Kevin Kolb. You had so many different pieces in that team. Andy Reid is unbelievable. I'm impressed beyond measure about what he's done so far. But I think this game's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's a game that probably is going to be relatively high scoring. And I think it's just one that I don't have a whole lot of stake in it, obviously, as a Bills content creator and a Bills fan myself. But it should be one that I think most people are kind of intrigued. The one thing I will say about this is I do not want to see the Chiefs win again. I can't bear to have to listen to another offseason about how Patrick Mahomes is the next Tom Brady, or he is the greatest quarterback of all time. I can't stomach it. I can't deal with it. So we're going to move forward. We're going to talk, because that's enough. I can't even deal. You got 2 minutes of the Super Bowl conversation. That's about as far as I can go. Guys, let's talk about the Buffalo Bills. Let's talk about this offseason. Let's talk about what we're kind of into in regards to the projections, the thoughts, the NFL draft, and whatnot. What I want to do first is, this past week, we did have locker clean out with the Buffalo Bills, and we heard from Sean McDermott where he talked about the needing of explosive playmakers.
When you look at your offense, do you think that you lacked explosion in the passing game this year? What I mean by that, you've got guys that do well, Shakir, Diggs, underneath, intermediate stuff. Are you lacking that explosive nature, and is that going to be a focal point maybe in the offseason here?
Yeah, you want to be efficient, you want to be explosive. It's hard to be both, right? So it's hard to serve two masters. And that being said, however, you need to create explosive plays in order to, if you look at and you study the game, that's when you look at scoring points. Usually a scoring drive has baked into it an explosive run or an explosive pass. Or a big time penalty, say, on the defense, right? So I understand that, we understand that, and that's a part of us moving forward as we look at our roster and we look at player acquisition, something that we need to take.
So that's Sean McDermott kind of talking a little bit about what's going on in regards to this offense. And so, guys, I think in regards to that, I think the Buffalo Bills are a very interesting point, because there's a couple schools of thought, a couple possibilities to how to approach this off season. I think one thing in specific we all kind of somewhat agree on is you need to add weapons. I think the tough part is how do you approach that with the frame, or the framing, or at least the thought process that the Bills should make a sound decision, whether it's in the draft, whether it's free agency, and what's the best course of action? Because obviously, not a lot of cap room, right? In terms of right now, we are over the cap. We are very limited in funds. You're going to have to see restructures. If you haven't seen it, make sure you check out Greg Thompson's salary cap special. It's a very kind of condensed version. There'll be another one in a couple weeks with the whole team. So there is options in return, or in terms of making that salary cap more palatable, getting compliant with the NFL, and making sure you've got, just costs of doing business funds, which is like $7 to $10 million for the season. And then on top of it, being able to make some type of moves. whether that's re-signing Daquan Jones, bringing AJ Epinesa or Leonard Floyd back. And then on top of that, potentially doing other things like extending Rasul Douglas, maybe giving an extension to Taron Johnson, which if you follow me on Twitter, side note, at the Thomas DeLoss right there, you can create some extra space. But then there's the other side of that, right? There's some talking points of maybe do you go to the draft to add some explosive players? Do you go to free agency to add some explosive players? And there's a bunch of different guys. There's a bunch of, I guess, options per se in terms of different routes you can take to fulfill the same needs. I think it just comes down to what's the best action for Brandon Beane, because I've heard all different stuff, right? I've had conversations with people who say, let's sell the farm and get up to the top of the draft, go after Malik Neighbors or Roma Dunze or Marvin Harrison Jr., which will cost quite a bit. And by moving up the draft board, you're going to be sacrificing a lot. And by doing so, it's a tough situation, right? Because when you're doing that, when you're sacrificing a lot of draft picks, and there is 10, right? You have the 9 draft picks. Obviously, they had a third. They traded that for Rasul Douglas, but they got a third back for Tremaine Edmonds as a comp pick. There is options, right? You have the 10 picks. You can get some stuff in the draft. But if you go out and trade, you're talking about sacrificing a lot, right? So in terms of trading, you have, I'm going to bring up a draft calculator just to give you some kind of details in terms of points, right? So the Bills right now at the 28th pick, their pick is worth 660 points. With that, the 660 points, if they wanted to get, let's say, up to, don't put that on the screen, Ian, there's some videos there. Up in terms of that, maybe to the 10th pick or the 12th pick, they could, but you're talking about potentially giving up 600 points, and you got to make those points up somewhere. So you could give draft picks this year and obviously sacrifice more of a more of a wiggle room, or on the alternative, you could go and potentially, trade some stuff from next year. Both of those are opportunities for the Buffalo Bills. It just comes down to how Brandon Beane sees his offseason, right? Because you have to navigate both the cap and the draft, and then also find your way to making sure that you're filling all the holes. Because the big part about this is, guys, we know that potentially Micah Hyde, you're funny, Spin. Micah Hyde, from what his wife is saying and the fact that he is at the end of his contract, doesn't look like he's going to be returning. There's some belief that Jordan Poyer might not come back. In terms of the defensive line, the only guys you have under contract are Rousseau, Oliver, and then Von Miller, who's in a very inflated contract. And then you're kind of just in a standstill, right? You in your wide receiver group, Gabe Davis is gone. Trent Sherfield's gone. Deontay Hardy's in the last year of his deal. Who knows if they keep him? So there's a lot of different things going on, and a lot of parts and pieces that they're moving through to try to figure out what the best course of action to bring these guys back, to fulfill the roster necessities and see how they can kind of navigate and do what they want. Side note, by the way, and if you guys know, I have a 1-year-old son. If you've been in this show before, I've struggled with being sick over the past probably 5 months. I am sick again because, of course, why not? My son has an ear infection, and he got me sick. So I have had a really rough day. I feel terrible, honestly. I don't feel great. I'm just trucking through it. So if I sound all blah, I apologize. I'm going to do my very, very best, which, by the way, cheers to all of you. I do want to hear all you guys, what you guys think, any ideas, people you want to actually bring in free agency, players that you're looking at in terms of the NFL draft. Mark, hi there. We are, here's how we move forward. Restructure Allen and Diggs, which saves $37 million. Then you can extend Dawkins, Douglas, McGovern, and Knox. These moves should free up money to make the cap 0. Someone's been paying attention to Greg Thompson. So yes, there is quite a few ways of being able to navigate the salary cap, open up some space, and then kind of leans into the who's available in terms of NFL free agency. So there are some really nice things. If you, again, like I said, if you follow along with me on Twitter, You see a lot of the stuff that I talk about on a weekly basis. Right now, it's a lot of NFL draft, a lot of it's free agency. There are some really, really, good parts and pieces. For the Buffalo Bills, for free agents right now for this season, there's quite a few. Micah Hyde, Daquan Jones, Leonard Floyd, Tim Settle, Jordan Phillips, Tyler Matakevich, Poona Ford, Dane Jackson, Tyrell Dodson, Taylor Rapp, Trent Sherfield, David Edwards, Damian Harris, Linval Joseph, AJ Epinesa, Shaq Lawson, Latavius Murray, Kyle Allen, Cam Lewis, Ty Johnson, Gabe Davis, Quentin Morris. A lot of guys right now in terms of needing to fill roster spots, needing to kind of churn the roster and make sure that you're filling out everything. What date is the salary cap? Salary cap becomes official, technically, is the league year. So the beginning of the league year is when you have to be compliant. Let me see what the league year date is this year. The NFL league year date is July 7th. Or no, that's not July 17th. Excuse me. That's wrong point in the season. Excuse me. Let's see. Free agency starts April 13th. First day of the 2024 league year will end. Let's see. Free agency opens at 4 p.m. So league year opens right at midnight on the 13th. So that's when everything becomes official. That's when all your money, you have to be cap compliant at that point. You have to be in the green on your books. So that's where they're at right now. But no, the actual salary cap though. Is that what you're asking? When they actually send out the salary cap numbers? That should be relatively soon. So I don't know the exact date is when they announce the actual salary cap. I can find that out. When do they announce the NFL salary cap? Let's see. Salary cap will be announced by memorandum as been done the past few years until after the new year. So that would be at some point between now and anytime. So that number should be coming up anytime now. We should get a good rough estimate. I don't think they've announced it just yet. I haven't heard anything because as far as I'm aware, they're still kind of finalizing all that details. But in terms of what's available, right? So if you're looking at what type of players are available, like I mentioned on my Twitter, you've got guys like Kyle Duggar. You got guys like Jeremy Chin, which if you don't know, Brandon Beane and the Buffalo Bills have top 30 visits every year. It's part of the pre-draft process. Basically, what that means is they bring in 30 guys from college. They could be undergraduates. They can be graduates. It doesn't matter what year of college they're in. They can bring them in for a visit. Those top 30 visits are premium visits. They more often, except for during COVID, come right in-house. They had Kyle Duggar. They had Jeremy Chin. In fact, they even had Mike Dana, who's a free agent from the Chiefs, in with the pre-draft process. Those are important. And the reason I say that is because with Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde potentially no longer being on the team, you got guys like Kyle Duggar, Jeremy Chin, who are free agents. Those are guys that you can actually potentially have in-house because you've already talked to them. They already have a good idea of what they like, kind of know what they're about. And that's a good perspective and a position to be in for the Buffalo Bills in terms of getting a head start on this stuff. So that's really, really good. Now let's talk about the wide receivers. I know it's kind of what everybody wants to talk about. There's some great wide receivers available this offseason. So in terms of offseason wide receivers, it is headlined by some big names. You've got guys like Mike Evans. You've got guys like T. Higgins, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, DJ Chark, some really, really big ones, Michael Pittman Jr. So let's talk about a couple of those, right? Let's talk about that. I'm gonna mute myself real quickly. I gotta blow my nose. I'm trying not to be absolutely gross. I apologize. Again, I am not super healthy right now. My son got me sick, so bear with me once. Okay, so apologize for that. I'm going to do my very best to stay alive during the show. But a lot of people have asked me on Twitter and, kind of in DMs and whatnot, is there a possibility that we could bring in a big name receiver, be it Michael Pittman Jr. or Mike Evans, or somebody mentioned Calvin Ridley. So in regards to a lot of these guys, and in regards to a lot of these free agent wide receivers, the inherently tough part about it is, guys like T. Higgins, guys like Michael Pittman, even to a degree, guys like Calvin Ridley are going for their big contract. A lot of them are going for their first ever contract outside of college. So they're going to be looking for that inflated, very guaranteed, heavy contract right out of the gate. Those are guys we're just not going to be able to afford. I know a lot of people are like, well, there's money in the banana stand. And to a degree, there is. But the tough part is it's just too much money and not enough in the banana stand. So in all fairness, if you want me to be transparent, it's just not something we can do. Now, there are some names on here that I do believe the Bills can get their hands on. There's a guy that I think the Bills probably have already talked about, Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel was part of the Carolina Panthers. I know everybody loves that Carolina Buffalo Bills connection. Curtis Samuel's best year as a pro was under Joe Brady. Joe Brady used to be the offensive coordinator under Matt Rule with Carolina. Had a very, very difficult stint in Carolina, Joe Brady did, but Curtis Samuel had his best year under Joe Brady. Really, really nice receiver, quite fast coming out of college. Had 62 receptions, 613 yards, 9.9 yards per reception, 4 touchdowns this year. Not an incredible year, but not a bad year by any stretch of the imagination. Definitely a guy that I think the Bills could look at. Plays both inside, outside, but primarily on the outside on the boundary. That's something obviously the Bills are looking for. That's one big thing. I know a lot of people, specifically myself, we've talked about speed. And I will say this. I think if you're going to ask me, Thomas, what kind of receiver are we looking for? I think at this point in time, if you want a receiver that's going to benefit Stephon Diggs, Khalil Shakir, and Dalton Kincaid, those are your big 3 right now. You need speed. You just need it. You need speed. You need somebody that can take the top off the defense. You need somebody that can make sure that their defense stays honest. Because quite frankly, what a lot of teams have been doing is they've been just doing a too high shell. That's what a lot of teams started to do. They knew the Bills were very successful, playing a lot of spread offense, really pushing the ball downfield. And so teams started playing a too high shell, basically kind of keeping everything in front of them. They saw what Leslie Frazier did. They replicated it, and they did it, right? A lot of dime defense, having smaller guys, having a nickel corner out there and keeping us in check. And that's great. That works, right? But what you need, the way you beat a two-eye shell is you need speed, right? Because you need somebody to be able to push past them, and you need somebody to be able to beat that style of defense. And that's what's going to end up happening for the Buffalo Bills. The biggest necessity this offseason is speed. There is some good guys there. You got guys like Kendrick Bourne, who's got quite a bit of speed. There's some guys with a little question marks, whether it's health or whether it's just quality of play. Guys like Mecole Hardman, Jakeem Grant. You guys that might cost a little bit more, and a guy like Calvin Ridley. You got some guys that we've had before, guys like Marquise Goodwin, who I think could be of benefit. All those guys, you're talking about a variance of different cost points, right? And I think that's what you're gonna kind of have to navigate down. And I hate to say the bargain bin, but in a certain reality, it has to be a guy that the Bills just can afford. They can't. We've seen in other years where Brandon Beane has maybe made one big splash. I don't think that's the case this year. I want to rein in the expectations for you guys. I want to temper the feelings. I hate to do this, but if you think we're going to make a big move, I implore you to kind of recalibrate and realize that's probably not going to happen. Just surely based on the amount of money the Bills have presently, even if they restructure, right? There's just not a lot of cash for the Bills to be able to do a lot. So if you're looking at what they can do, you're more than likely, I think, and I even think it's going to be too expensive with Calvin Ridley. I think your high end is going to be a guy like Curtis Samuel. I mean, I don't know if you probably could get Odell Beckham on a cheaper deal, but I don't know. To be honest, I wasn't truly impressed. I think he had a average to below average year with the Baltimore Ravens. There's other guys like DJ Chark, who's just kind of been average to mediocre for most of his career. I had high hopes. I loved DJ Chark at one point, had him on my fantasy team. Didn't really pan out. But most of these guys, you're looking at that kind of, I want to say, kind of just mid to low range receiver. That's going to be a kind of cost, more so probably in the $5 to $9 million per year range, if we're being fair. I think that's what you're looking at. And you're really going to want to find somebody that has that boundary, either experience or that ability, right? You can have versatility. You have a guy that can go outside, inside. That's fine. But I wouldn't go too heavy on somebody in the slot. Like people have mentioned Tyler Boyd. I love Tyler Boyd. We should all love Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd's the reason why the Bills made the playoffs in 2017. Tyler Boyd's a fantastic receiver. Great hands. Really, really, really reliable. A little older. He's 29. He'll probably, if my math is correct, be 30 by just about the start of the league year, or by the season starting. But the reality is, I just don't know for the Buffalo Bills if somebody like that, if you're going to put a slot receiver, because then you're just saying, okay, Khalil Shakir, we're going to put you on the outside. And I think in some degree, Khalil Shakir could do that, but I don't think that's where Khalil Shakir is going to truly thrive or he's going to really flourish as a receiver. I think his best bet is being in the slot. And we can move some guys around, but I think that's where the guys with the versatility, right? The guys that can play inside, outside, give you more versatility. Because then you guys, between Stephon Diggs, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid included, who you can play inside, outside, and then whoever you bring in, you have the ability to move guys all around. And that makes the Bills an incredibly difficult defense to play on a week in and week out basis. So there's some good guys in here. A lot of them, like I said, are going to be bargain bin shopping, in all fairness. I don't think it's a bad thing. You can find some really diamonds in the rough here, guys that maybe work better for your team. But for the most part, I implore you to look at the lower cost free agents, just because I think that's where we're going to be. We do have some guys that we can look at in terms of other positions. So we're doomed for next year. No, I don't think we're doomed at all. Yeah, PFF said that the Bills were one of the teams, and I know Pittman loves the Bills. He loves the Bills jersey. Unless I almost said Brian Pittman. That's Brian Pillman. That's a wrestler for anybody who's into wrestling. I know Pittman would love to play for the Bills, but unless I keep saying Michael Pittman wants to take a significant salary reduction for a guy going for his first ever contract, I'd be very surprised. He's looking to get paid. Side note, let's do the weekly hello NFL draft fanatics. Cliff Mueller, Chris 716, Chill Will, Mark Krajewski, Heather Smith, Spin. What else we got here? Who else here? Who? Chill Will, I think I said you. James Collins, Black Panther, and Ian. Hello. Good evening. Glad you guys are all here. If you guys are not talking, feel free to jump in the conversation. I'd love to have you. And I really do appreciate you guys all being here tonight. But guys, like I said, in regards to free agency, wide receiver is a tough one. Not a whole lot there. And so that's why, and we'll do some mock drafts tonight. We'll talk about what the NFL draft looks like, how that's looked in terms of who's available, how the Senior Bowls looked. But that's why my belief and my feeling is I wouldn't get your heart set on free agency. I just don't think it's the method or the route the Bills will be taking. If they do, it's a low cost wide receiver. I could see them maybe bringing in Trent Sherfield or bring him back on a 1-year deal, probably something very incentive laden. Just as a blocking wide receiver, since you're losing Gabe Davis, I think him being in here, you're not going to rely on him, but having him as that blocking wide receiver would be impactful. Then in terms of other positions, I'll tell you, safety is one that I'm very intrigued about. Very, very intrigued about. Safety this year for free agency has some unbelievable names. You've got guys like Budda Baker, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Jordan Whitehead, who you should know because he's the one that picked off Josh Allen 3 times in the opener. You've got Darnell Savage from the Green Bay Packers. Maybe he wants to pair up with his buddy Rasul. Mike Edwards from the Kansas City Chiefs had a nice little season. Like I mentioned, Kyle Duggar from the New England Patriots. Antoine Winfield Jr. Could we see another Antoine Winfield here in the red, white, and blue? Taylor Rapp, obviously a free agent. Could we bring him back? Deshaun Elliott played for the Miami Dolphins. Not a bad season. Not a great player, but serviceable for sure. Other really, really nice ones. Adrian Amos, a little bit older, but a veteran who understands a lot of different defenses. And then, some guys that, we've had in here. Not some really, really nice names. You're probably going to pay a little bit, right? Buda Baker is the one I'm really looking at. If you could get your hands on Buda Baker, that'd be a hell of a player to be able to insert into this defense. But to be honest with you, I could see a guy like Jeremy Chin, like I mentioned. I could see a guy like Kyle Duggar. He'll be a little bit more expensive, but he would be a really, really nice addition. Both of them, you can kind of interchange. Both of them very heady, very smart players. Both of them were in for top 30 visits. And the reason I mentioned this, and I mentioned defensive players, right, is because you're more likely in the safety market. You saw what happened with Jordan Poyer last year. He thought he was going to get his payday, and this is no disrespect to Jordan. I love Jordan Poyer. But he went out and realized the market was softer than he anticipated. Came on back. We gave him a good kind of team-friendly deal, and it worked out for both sides. I think you might see a very similar situation. This year, I think going to the free agent market for safety might be beneficial. The only thing that might hurt them is the fact that there's not a whole heck of a lot of safeties that are coming out in the NFL draft. There's honestly only a few of them that are really worth kind of their weight in gold. You have the guy right at the top who's just, an unbelievable talent out of Miami, Cam Kitchens. Outside of that, then you got a few other dudes that are, really, really talented, but, they're kind of sneaking up the draft board right now. Kalen Bullock, Tyler Nubin, Tyke Smith from Georgia, all very, very talented. And then you get a little bit deeper, guys like Jaden Hicks, Evan Williams, Bo Braid from Maryland. Some really, really nice, talented safeties. So, but it's not a stockpile, right? There's not a massive number this year. So I think it's one of those things that you're going to kind of have to pick and choose with free agency what your best case scenario is. Excuse me. Before I get any bit further with that right now, I want to tell you guys about our sponsor tonight, Underdog Fantasy. Guys, let's get into this Underdog Fantasy talk. Underdog in Cover One are excited to once again partner for the most dynamic name in fantasy football. That is Underdog Fantasy. I want to tell you about the easiest way to get some action in the NFL. It's Underdog Fantasy and their Pick'em game. Just pick higher or lower in your favorite or least favorite player's stats, and you can win 20 times your money in a single night. Underdog keeps it super simple with their easy-to-use website and mobile apps. Pick between 2 and 5 players to fill out your Pick'em entry. Get every pick right and take home some cold, hard cash. Use code COVER1 and get your first deposit doubled up to $500 by Underdog. Underdog Fantasy is the best and easiest way to place and play fantasy sports. Not only do they have NFL, but they've also got MLB, NBA, and more. Get in the fun today. Join Underdog Fantasy and use code COVER1. So there is that, guys. Back to what we were saying in terms of fantasy, in terms of the NFL draft. I think if we're looking at things realistically, I think the best case of action is just being fair to probably looking at wide receivers in the draft, at least from the early on situation, right? Just because I think the Bills are in a position of need. They need a wide receiver, right? Gabe Davis is gone. Trent Sherfield's probably gone. Who knows with Deontay Hardy? And I know they signed some future deals, right? I know they signed Andy Isabella. I know they signed KJ Hamler. I like KJ Hamler. Who knows what he is? Andy Isabella was on our practice squad. Nobody wanted him all year long. I'm not really banking on that. I know we've got Justin Shorter. Again, I kind of referenced this earlier, right? When you go out shopping, right, and you got a gift card, but you don't know the balance on the gift card, you're not going to go to dinner with just the gift card, right? Because God forbid there's nothing on the gift card or there's not enough on the gift card. You don't want to be stuck. You don't want to be in a situation where like, oh, dinner's $45 and my gift card's worth 15 and I don't have any other cash. You don't want to come up shorthanded. Well, you don't want to go into the season with Justin Shorter thinking he's what you're gonna rely on, right? He's not gonna be your number 2 receiver. You want to make sure you stockpile the cabinet, make sure you've got every asset you need to be able to compete with the Chiefs, compete with the Browns, the Bengals, the Ravens, all the top teams in the AFC, and then of course, obviously, potentially in the NFC. So in regards to that, I think going into the draft with as many, possibilities as possible, specifically with with free agency opening up before the draft, fill a couple holes in free agency with some key components, whether it's defensive line or, maybe a low end wide receiver, kind of a Curtis Samuel, or, getting a Kyle Duggar, Darnell Savage, Jeremy Chin, maybe a Buda Baker, who knows? Those are great to fulfill some needs that you have, and then you can move forward, right? All those things are great. All those things provide you the ability to have a little bit more flexibility, the ability to kind of feel like you're in a better position in terms of the offseason. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to bring up, and let me make sure I've got, hold on one second. This is all in full screen. We are good. And we're going to put it in, Ian, if you want to put in the right one. Thank you. So guys, this is a PFF mock draft board. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through this, but we're going to be taking our time. Because what I want to do is I kind of want to go through this in the realm of what does it look like to trade up? What does the cost look like? I do have, I will bring up the points and how everything's looking. Chris Janke, hello. Dave Bradley, hello. If I haven't said hello to you guys, I'm glad you guys are here. If you guys don't know Chris Janke, fantastic follow on Twitter, super intelligent. Guy's got a photographic memory, which I don't. So it's good to have somebody like him in my corner. Cheers. Again, I apologize. My voice is dying. I back sick again, as usual. That being said, what we're going to do is we're going to go through this slowly together. We're going to be talking through what the draft looks like, how this works, and kind of how this makes sense for the Buffalo Bills. Because a big part about this is for the Buffalo Bills, let's say if you want to go out, and obviously you have the 4 main wide receivers, right? Or 3, we'll say. You've got you got Marvin Harrison Jr., you got Roma Dunze, and you got Malik Neighbors. Then after that, right, after those, you've got guys like Brian Thomas Jr. and Troy Franklin, who's one of my personal favorites. You've got, Keon Coleman, Xavier Worthy, and the list goes on. Very, very talented, very, very explosive wide receivers, very heavy. But the tough part is there's not a lot of them, and there's quite a few teams. If we look at who in the NFL, and what I'm going to do is, bear with me, I'm just moving some stuff around so I can try to be as organized as humanly possible, because when you have 19 screens, this is really difficult. So if we look at the NFL draft order, just so I can kind of give a good perspective, what we want to do is kind of take a look who we think has the best option in terms of who's going to go after quarterback, who's going to go after wide receiver. Obviously, at the top of the draft, you've got Chicago. So in terms of the Chicago Bears, one would have to think that Chicago has 2 schools of thought, right? Are they going to keep Justin Fields, or are they going to trade him maybe to an Atlanta, right, because he's from Georgia, and try to get a quarterback like a Caleb Williams? Either way, the likelihood is it's probably, I would guess, Chicago or somebody else going to take a quarterback 1. I don't know if Washington in a new regime is really settled on Sam Howell, so I think they could potentially be in on a quarterback. New England is absolutely going to be in a quarterback. I haven't had enough time to spend time with your draft simulator, so I apologize. I don't want to give a wrong impression on it. I didn't want to actually do a bad or an injustice to it, so don't take it personally. I will absolutely use it in one of my upcoming shows. I just didn't have the time, having a 1-year-old son, trying to get him to eat dinner while he's not feeling that well. So that being said, if we're talking about the rest of the draft, Arizona, interesting question mark as to whether or not you think they are going to go, what their needs are. I still have this real wonder, are they going to keep Kyler Murray? Is there a team that will take them or take Kyler Murray off their hands? What are the Chargers going to do? Are they going to get another wide receiver? Obviously, they went Quentin Johnston this past year. They have a lot of needs right now. I think they could go all different directions. Do they go younger on that defensive line with, Khalil Mack kind of getting up there in age? And then you move on. The Giants, the Titans, the Falcons, all three could potentially go quarterback. I know they have. I know the Titans have Will Levis. I truly believe that the Titans absolutely could go quarterback. I think you're right. I think the Arizona Cardinals need a lot of defense, specifically with Isaiah Simmons leaving this or in the middle of the season this past year. Budda Baker maybe not returning. I think they have a ton of needs there. Chicago at number 9 likely is going to go receiver. I would guess, unless they sign a big one in free agency, maybe a T. Higgins goes there. And then it starts getting interesting, right? The Jets absolutely need some help. I think it depends. Do they go wide receiver? Do they go tackle? I don't know if they go defensive interior, to be honest with you. I think they've got a nice defensive line, but do they add more? Now, the reason I bring all this stuff up and the importance of, I think, a lot of this conversation is the fact that these all kind of play into what these teams are going to do in front of the Buffalo Bills. Because the reality is, for the Buffalo Bills, their drafts are kind of hinging on what other teams are going to do around them, right? I think a lot of the Buffalo Bills kind of want to know that, are they going to be able to get the guy that they're kind of suiting, or do they have to move up? Because a lot of people talked to me today, and the conversation was, do you think the Buffalo Bills are going to move forward? And see, here's the thing with Brandon Beane. Brandon Beane is the type of general manager, we've seen it before, very, very, very aggressive. Every single draft, he's traded either back or forward. He's moved all over the draft board. And that's good context to have, because then at least if there's somebody available, you don't think it's kind of odd place for your general manager to move around to get to that person. And the reason I say that is, let's say you're targeting Malik Neighbors, right? You kind of want to know, and the Buffalo Bills are going to go through their mock drafts after they set the board, and a lot of that is inherently contingent on the NFL draft, the NFL Combine, the Senior Bowl, the East-West Shrine. All those are going to play into, as well as pro days, how the teams feel about each guy, stock risers, guys that are plummeting, and when they fill out their boards and how they all look. And so when it comes to the Buffalo Bills and it comes time to do their mock drafts, and they'll do a bunch of them, right? They're going to do a ton of mock drafts every day up until the very, very, very end, because they want to figure out every possible scenario of what they could see in front of them, what could possibly happen, how that draft looks, what potential curveballs they could see, and just kind of, get a good framework as to when they walk in, they want to know that they have come across every scenario possible. So let's say Malik Neighbors is your target, and you're looking across all these picks. And obviously with the Buffalo Bills being at 28, it's tough. There's a lot of work to be done if you want to get up that high. Because let's say you need to get to pick. I don't think the Jets are going to trade with their division, especially if the Bills are trying to get a wide receiver. And most people would guess the Bills want a wide receiver. So my guess is you're either going to have to go above the Jets or below the Jets. And the tough part is when you go above the Jets, again, you're going very expensive. And when you go below the Jets, a little less expensive, but it's still pretty prohibitive, right? I think the sweet spot, if you wanted to get there and you started seeing like a Malik Neighbors or a Rome Odunze fall, is maybe look at that 10-11 spot. We have relationships with the Vikings, obviously now with their current staff. We've dealt with the Broncos and John Elway before. We've dealt with the Raiders. Those are all teams that I think would be willing to, work with us. Only the Broncos really need a receiver, but they've got much bigger needs like quarterback. And I could see even the Broncos jumping up in that draft order. But I think what it's going to come down to, yes, I need better internet connection. Unfortunately, you can never provide that because your internet stinks. Cheers. That's Joe DeRosa, ladies and gentlemen, part of the Under Review podcast every Tuesday night. Check him out. One of my buddies. He'll be part of the squad heading down to Detroit for the NFL draft. We might even be getting an Airbnb together. Not that that matters, but there's a detail that I gave you. Very weird. I don't know why I said that. I don't even know why I mentioned that. I guess it really doesn't matter in all things considered, right? Bros being bros. Um, what a weird piece of information to deliver to the chat tonight. I'm losing it, folks. This is pretty much an average thing for me to lose my composure at least one point during the show. Needless to say, here we are, ladies and gents. We're gonna get back into this, guys. I think no, I'm not hiding anything. I'm just hiding that I'm going to Detroit. Now you know, and I can't hide it anymore. Thanks, Ian. Do the Jets go receiver or O-line? I think they have to go O-line. Unless it's Aaron Rodgers who's their general manager, to be fair. That offensive line has been, I mean, that's the reason Aaron Rodgers was hurt. They have to go O-line. And I don't even think there's enough in free agency for them to be able to supplement to help that O-line. I mean, between Mekhi Becton, Elijah Vera Tucker, I mean, they've got Joe Tippmann, which is great, but the rest of the line has been so hit or miss in terms of injuries. I don't think they can rely on it. I think they need to heavily invest. And I know they might want, to be honest, I think they might end up with Devontae Adams, even if it means sacrificing some draft capital or at least a wide receiver. They don't got a ton of cap, but I think they'll find a way. I got to guess. I got to think they got to go offensive line just for the sake of where they're at in terms of their kind of situation. But let's go ahead. Let's start this draft. We're going to kind of see. We're going to go slow. I'll pause a couple times. We'll recalibrate and kind of see how high we need to get, right? There's a chance that we're going to lose all the receivers very quickly. So be prepared. So right now we are, let's get to 5. And right there, you've got 2 of the wide receivers already gone. Patriots took Marvin Harrison Jr. I think it's entirely possible they could, depending on who they get in free agency. Let's say that New England Patriots could go ahead and get Russell Wilson. Then Marvin Harrison Jr. makes a lot of sense. Getting a wide receiver for them fixes a lot of issues. Malik Neighbors being a big-time need for the Arizona Cardinals. You could see that. They've got Kyler Murray. I think him, having a good wide receiver is big. That's a big blow for other teams below, but I think Brandon Beane and the rest of the staff kind of figure probably not going to get their hands on him. And if they did, it would take some pretty heavy lifting. So let's say for the sake of conversation, right? I don't think the next couple. I think Giants are probably the next one that need a wide receiver. Maybe the Titans. So let's see what happens here. And so the Falcons, of course, who need a quarterback, decided to go at wide receiver. So that's the type of thing with a lot of these boards is they're not always accurate. They're not always 100%. I don't really think, to be honest with you, the Falcons would go wide receiver at this point. I think they've got enough weapons. I think they truly need a quarterback. I think it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But that kind of tells you the ideology of these machines, that the belief is that these guys are going to go early and often. And I think that's probably fairly accurate. I think the tough part is where the Bills need to go. So let's see. Let's try to get to like 15, right? And let's see if Troy Franklin is available. Okay. So we got to 15. We're now at the Seattle Seahawks. Troy Franklin, who is my favorite guy, my favorite wide receiver, is available at 16. Let's see what that looks like for the Buffalo Bills to get 16, right? What are the needs according to the Bills in the simulator? Wide receiver, tackle, defensive interior, linebacker, defensive back. So not exactly 100% accurate, I think. I don't think tackle is a need. Defensive interior is fine. And, why don't we do this? I'm going to take this off the screen one sec. Let me see if I can find a better one here. Hold on one second. Just because I don't really like how that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me for the Buffalo Bills to have tackle as one of their necessities. So let's go ahead here. 7 rounds, normal speed. Let's see. Okay. Let's draft. Okay. I gotta get some of this crap off the screen here. Apologies. And it's already going. Restart. Yes. Why is there so much junk on the screen? I apologize, guys. What a mess this is. I'm trying my very best to circumnavigate. Here we go. Okay. We are good. Let me get some of this junk off here. All these advertisements everywhere. And apparently an advertisement for Captain Morgan. Okay. So we've got this right here. We're going to pause. Excuse me. So in terms of this right here, let's take a look. It actually doesn't even say exactly what the needs are, but we're going to go through, see if we can figure out in terms of what the best course of action for the Bills, how we can get them what they need. So let's go ahead and start the draft right now. Looks pretty similar, all things considered, except for the Arizona Cardinals taking Jaden Daniels. I can't imagine that happening. So a lot of these guys seem to be very, very similar in their belief of who's going to take what. I think what's going to come down to is how high we can actually go, right? So let's say we're at 20 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's try making a trade here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. What it's going to take to move up in order to get the guy we want. So let's say that's Troy Franklin, right? We got 28. They've got 20. Likely we're going to need to trade at least our 4th round pick. Let's throw in one of our 5ths and see if they take that. So 28, 128, 161. That trade was declined. My guess is it's just surely not enough. And since we're already moving, let's try to play it out all the way to 28. And here we are. We are at 28. We're going to reject all these. Let's make a pick right here. We actually made it all the way there with Troy Franklin. Guys, got to ask, who do you think, in terms of the Buffalo Bills, what is your thought? What is a guy that you would like the Buffalo Bills to go after? Obviously, it says cornerback, safety, offensive tackle, wide receiver, linebacker. I think for the Buffalo Bills, I think a wide receiver would be incredibly important. You got guys like A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Legette, Ladd McConkey, who, side note, if you haven't been watching the Senior Bowl, and a bunch of our guys like Anthony Prohaska, Eric Turner, you got Dan and John from our college show. All of them are down there right now taking a look at the NFL draft or at the Senior Bowl. They've had great guys: Ladd McConkey, Javon Baker, Roman Wilson, who you saw us play from this past couple days. Really, really good stuff. Really, really talented receivers down there that are making huge impacts, helping their stock. Ladd McConkey's stock has just been soaring in the past couple days, including Brendan Rice, which I don't know if my buddy Justin is in here, but I know that's his dude. Guys, so let's go ahead and let's try. Let's take Troy Franklin. I think Troy Franklin is the one that's the best bet for the Buffalo Bills. Great value at 28. You know this is pretty bad when the Lions are taking J.J. McCarthy at 29. That's why some of the stuff I don't necessarily believe. But let's go ahead and pause where we're at, and let's look at the defensive side. We've got Tyler Nubin right now, who's available. We've got Tavondre Sweat. So let's go ahead and try to make a trade. We're at 60 right now. Let's go trying to get up and see if we can get, whether it's Tavondre Sweat. And I don't know if you guys have paid attention. Tavondre Sweat, defensive tackle, 1 tech out of Texas. Really, really, really big, physical, meaty, 362-pound, 6'5" defensive tackle. Let's go ahead and see if we can get up to Green Bay and make a trade with the Packers for Tavondre Sweat, fill that defensive tackle position that is such a necessity for us. So let's go ahead. Let's try trading 128, 161 again and see what they say. And they declined it. So a lot of these trades are going to be really tough. A lot of these teams are not really willing to move right now. A lot of talent still on the board. So let's go ahead and let's play this out and see how this looks for us when we get down to 60. Maybe we get lucky. Nope, Tavondre Sweat just went right there. What we'll do is we'll kind of recalibrate, see what it looks like in terms of pick 60. We're not going to take any draft trades right now. I kind of want to see what we're looking at. Offense, we do have some nice pieces. Malachi Corley is available. Got some nice, the center from Georgia, Cedric Van Pran. Really, really, really good center there. I don't think we're going to go running back at this point or tight end, just not a real need, even though Audric Estime is available, one of my favorite guys. Defense, Some really nice pieces. Darius Robinson. Guys, this is actually an interesting guy right here. Darius Robinson. And I don't know if you know who Jim Nagy is. Jim Nagy is the head of the Senior Bowl. He's the one that's in charge of all of that. Jim Nagy actually posted about Darius Robinson and said, if you had heard the name that one of the coaches for the American team, which is one of the sides of the Senior Bowl, what he compared Darius Robinson to, you would see him skyrocket up the board. So, and the reason I mentioned that is there's another writer, and he mentioned J.J. Watt because of Darius Robinson's ability to be a 5-tech, kind of playing outside, inside, all over the place, very, very versatile, physical, but fast and kind of an athletic freak. He compared Darius Robinson to J.J. Watt. I don't know about you, that'd be an incredible piece to this defensive line, and I think in this position it might be worth taking Darius Robinson. You do have some safeties here. Now, obviously, that's inherently dependent on what happens in free agency. I think if you go ahead and get a Darnell Savage or, like I said, a Jeremy Chin, I think they may wait a little bit before they go safety that early. Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and take Darius Robinson here. I think it's a little early. I mean, we have Chris Jenkins from Michigan. We got Michael Hall from Ohio State, McKinley Jackson from A&M. But we do have Bo Braid. Oh, you know what? You guys tell me, Bo Braid or Darius Robinson? That's going to be the tough one. I didn't see Bo Braid there. Bo Braid is a fantastic safety out of Maryland. That's going to be a very, very... I think Bo Braid would be a nice addition to this defensive unit. I think Darius Robinson would be a lot of fun. But the reason reason we're doing this, just for the sake of conversation, so kind of what's going on. And if you guys are watching right now on the recap, and I'll post this on my Twitter, I'll pin this, which I've done the last week. You can check this out. What we're doing was kind of going through and kind of just looking at possibilities for the NFL draft, talking through why we're doing this, the value basis, how this looks for the Buffalo Bills, why it looks this way for the Buffalo Bills, and what it means to kind of move up and down the board. What I'll say is right now, a lot of the stuff is very early. A lot of these names are going to disappear for the sake of what's happening in the NFL draft. Names are going to pop up that we haven't even talked about yet. Whether it's, like I said, the Senior Bowl, the NFL or the Combine, Pro Days, all that stuff is going to elevate or potentially, plummet specific talent as their stock rises or falls. The reason I do this is kind of just, we'll do this every couple of shows, and even every show we could do one of these and talk it out and kind of see what we think each week and how guys are rising and falling. But the reason I mention doing this is because I think it's important to kind of get a good idea in terms of what Brandon Beane's looking at. Like I said on the onset of the show, we know that they want wide receiver, but the tough part is between their lack of salary cap, and we know that there's just not a sheer amount of salary cap for the Buffalo Bills. They're not going to be able to do a lot in free agency. So then inherently it's in the draft. But the draft is a crapshoot, right? Because you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what other teams in front of you are going to do. You don't know how things are going to fall. So you're doing your very best to plan ahead. That old phrase, plan for the worst, hope for the best. Or that might not even be the phrase. My brother Ian will give me the right phrase. I totally jacked that up. The ideology here is that you want to put yourself in a position to understand what's in front of you and make the best decisions across the offseason to put yourself in a position of success. And knowing that the Bills have a bunch of holes, getting as many high octane, high talent players to fulfill those needs are going to be super beneficial. So let's go ahead. Let's do Darius Robinson, a guy that could definitely help this defensive line, can play inside, outside, which is great. Versatility on the Bills' defensive line is of huge need. Here's the one part, though, for the Buffalo Bills. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. Okay. I thought that was the right phrase. Don't mind me. And I apologize. Again, I'm not feeling great, so I apologize if I sound very blah right now. Ian, you're his brother. I feel sorry for you. Spin, you are ever so kind to me every week. I truly do appreciate you always being here, though. But the one thing that's going to be tough about this part of the draft, right? There has to be a concerted effort to get a weapon early, right? If you are going to get a receiver, there is some belief that you're going to probably want to do it in the first round. And the reason I say that is I think, can you imagine if Spin was actually my brother and I didn't know, and these two are talking to each other, talking to himself? The reason I mentioned getting one early is, one, obviously you get your pick of the litter. But the big part about this is, guys, in the first round is your fifth-year option. And I mentioned this the other day on Twitter. And like I said, follow me on Twitter at @ThomasDeLoss. I do very much appreciate all you guys follow me. I've had a ton of new followers recently. Really, really appreciate you guys. Really great engagement. I've had a lot of fun on Twitter recently. It's been a while since I've had a lot of fun. I've had a great time the past couple of weeks. So thanks to you guys. Props to you. You guys make my life pretty awesome. I do appreciate that. But the reason I mention it is the fifth-year option and the cost, because there's three elements. It's, did you make 2 Pro Bowls? And I don't know why you use Pro Bowl as a lever or a kind of a metric to making more money. But it's 2 Pro Bowls, 1 Pro Bowl, 75% gameplay or, time on field, or no criterion met. So those are all important because the cost analysis, right, when you're looking at the fifth-year option, those numbers can go and drop fast, right? The other side to that is, and the reason I mention this is, if you don't have that fifth-year option, or if you want to look at the actual cost of franchise tagging, they go up exponentially, right? So the franchise tag, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. Excuse me, I'm a whole lot of mess right now. Franchise tag NFL wide receiver is $19,743, right? And then fifth-year option cost. The fifth-year projections, right? For wide receiver. Where did I say this? Okay. So the fifth-year option, the highest fifth-year option with 2 Pro Bowls is $19,743. So the same as the tag. That's the highest, right? So if you make 2 Pro Bowls, that's the same tag cost. And the reason that's important is if you got them in the second round, you're paying for that same cost. But here's where it gets tricky, right? Because if you have that fifth-year option, you have the ability to negotiate. You exercise the fifth-year option, and then you can work on negotiations. If not, then what you have to do is you have to go right into that negotiation period. And let's say you've got in a fourth round or second round pick without the fifth-year option, you've got a Jamar Chase. Well, Jamar Chase is likely going to get $30+ million. So now, instead of being able to alleviate that $11 million, and you'll probably go ahead and, probably come up with a lower first-year figure, maybe a $7 million, a lot of guaranteed money, but the rest of it kind of pushed out and spread out over the rest of the 5-6 year contract. If you don't have that, then you're going $30 million off the gate, a lot of guaranteed money up front, a higher base salary number, and still pressing the money out a little bit further. That's where it gets more difficult. That's why that fifth-year option is really important, because for a lot of teams, and let's bring up the Cincinnati Bengals for conversation. Cincinnati Bengals right now have Joe Burrow under contract. Great. They're about to pay Jamar Chase. They also have T. Higgins, who's a free agent, Tyler Boyd, who's a free agent, Trent Irwin, who's a free agent. And the reason I mention all that is they still haven't paid Jamar Chase, and they have those 3 that are free agents. Once they pay Jamar Chase another $30+ million, and he got him in the first round, so they got that extra year contract. What that does is they could go ahead and do T. Higgins right now, but it's going to make it incredibly difficult to sign Jamar Chase next year, because then you're going to have 3 guys with salary cap hits of over $30 million apiece. Because T. Higgins is probably going to be one of the most expensive wide receivers in the NFL presently. So that's the tough part when it comes to that. But that's the reason I mention is, his contract hits very, very soon. In fact, let's see, where does Joe Burrow? The reason I mention 275 million, his contract next year is 29. After that, 46, 48, 52. It balloons really quickly. But the reason why I mentioned about the first year, right, and in terms of, kind of getting some type of draft pick or a weapon early, is it's two-part. Right, obviously with that fifth-year option, which is incredibly important. But then there's the other side of that conversation. You go and you're at 28, right? And you have pretty much every receiver available that hasn't been taken in front of you, which it could be, you could have Brian Thomas Jr., you could have Troy Franklin and Ladd McConkey and Xavier Worthy, Xavier Leggett, Keon Coleman. Like, you could have everybody minus like four or five receivers. But then what happens is from 28 to 60, you've got a ton of picks in the middle. And then from 60, your next pick is 104. And the reason I make that conversation important is you have two massive chunks right there where there's going to be a ton of wide receivers that are going to go. And for the Buffalo Bills, where they are in their current situation, you have to strike while the iron's hot. And the salary cap being a big part of this, the fifth-year option being a big part of this. And yes, there is a lot of wide receiver talent. We know this. It's a very deep wide receiver class. But that deep wide receiver class is going to thin out very quickly. The NFL today knows it's a pass-first league and a pass-first offense. So making sure that you're able to go ahead and get another receiver is unbelievably important. What we're going to do, we're going to run this all the way to 100 while we're talking. When we get to 100, we're going to look and see. And we're just going to recap the top 3 picks, how we look, how we feel. And we'll keep going, in the next couple weeks up until when we actually have the NFL draft and see what we're looking at in terms of how things are for the Buffalo Bills, what we think is going to happen. I want you guys to give me your weekly ideas. I am working on next week potentially having a guest come and talk to us. That's kind of in the works right now. But the one thing I do want to say before we get to this final draft pick right here, guys, I do want to thank you guys. I do very much appreciate you guys being here tonight on Buffalo Late Night. It means the world to me. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on Cover One's YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that notification button and let you know every single time one of our shows is live. Make sure you hit me up on Twitter at the Thomas DeLaus, TheThomasDelaus. I appreciate you. You mean the world to me. I'm glad you guys tune in every single week to, come up with all different ideas, talk about everything that you guys think is going to happen in the NFL. Means everything. But let's go ahead and take a look at this final pick right here and see what we have available to us. We have a ton of different options right here. Another defensive tackle, Mason Smith, who is a guy that honestly probably would have gone a lot higher had he not had an ACL injury. James Williams, safety out of Miami, Florida. Some corners, Josh Newton out of TCU. Let's take a look and see what we got on offense, though. We got Jamari Thrash, who is a unbelievably talented wide receiver out of Louisville. But let's go ahead and take a look at my guy. This is a little early, but you know what? I don't care because he's going to rise to the occasion. I don't know if you guys have been watching, but Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver out of Florida. If you look at my Twitter feed, and like I said, that's why I make sure I tell you guys to follow me on Twitter. I've been putting up a lot of content recently. Ricky Pearsall is legitimately one of the most impressive draft prospects. He's 6'1", between 180 and 190. Has some of the best hands in the draft. One of the lowest drop percentages. Runs some of the most immaculate and beautiful routes. Very clean feet. Great release packages. Really nuanced route runner. Play him inside. Play him outside. Just overall confidence. I've talked to people who literally go to Florida, who went to Florida, who work at Florida. And the what is said about him is he is a great person. Easily somebody that you get along with. Really good teammate. But just in totality, just a gamer, a guy that wants to win. 3rd year in a row, we draft a guy from Florida. Absolutely janky. Absolutely. So let's go ahead and we'll take Ricky Pearsall. I think that is a fantastic top 3 picks. So we'll go ahead and pause that roll there right there. First 3 picks: Troy Franklin, Darius Robinson, Ricky Pearsall. Man, and he did, but a lot of those were. I mean, in sincerity, spin. He dropped 2 of them in that Philadelphia game where he had the wrong gloves because it was supposed to be pouring. That's a rookie move. That happens. Other than that, you're talking 3 drops for the entire year on 90 plus targets. I mean, that's really very impressive. So I think if we're looking at it, guys, and we'll kind of just put this in a bow and kind of call it a day here. But I think a lot of what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is we've got a great opportunity for the Buffalo Bills. And Ian, if you want to put me back on the screen, because I can't see anything right now. I think the Buffalo Bills are in a great position to really kind of focus and hone in on what they want to do to fix their entire wide receiver core. I think it's going to come down to how everything looks in free agency. And like I said, I don't expect them to go kind of balls to the wall. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. Whatever. It's Buffalo late night. Who cares? I don't expect them to go, hog wild in trying to fill needs in free agency. It's probably going to be a lot of cost-effective decisions, a lot of kind of just making sure they're doing right by the salary cap, but also retaining some of their own, like Daquan Jones, AJ Epinesa, by extending others like Rasul Douglas and Taron Johnson, like I mentioned at the top of the show. You might get a couple guys, but I think going in the draft, there's going to be an onus on trying to fulfill these needs like wide receiver. At the top of the show, if you missed it, I did play an audio clip from Sean McDermott talking about the fact that they need to get more explosive plays in the team. So that's all being said. But, guys, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me tonight. It's been a rough night. I don't feel all that awesome, so I do thank you. You guys, as per usual, have been wonderful, beautiful. You're amazing. I love you. I will see you guys back here next week, every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Buffalo Late Night, here with me, Thomas DeLoss, on Twitter at the Thomas DeLoss. I love you. We will see you here to talk more about the NFL Draft, more about the Senior Bowl, more about everything on this journey. We're going to be on this together. I expect you here next week. I need your help. Let's keep going. Let's build this thing up better than ever. Let's beat the Chiefs next season, but it starts right now. Let's go, Buffalo.
The Bills make me wanna.